Perfect. All right. So welcome everyone to Reorganize Your Health, where tonight what we're going to be discussing is a revolutionary healthcare paradigm that not just myself, but a network of doctors throughout the country are currently bringing into their offices and attempting to shift our focus from a disease care-based model of healthcare to a health and wellness-based model of healthcare. Okay, one that focuses more on the whole person and not just on symptoms or the correction of symptoms and disease. So, welcome to Beyond Chiropractic. I am Dr. David, and I'll be your host for tonight. Move right into what we want to discuss tonight. So the first thing we want to look at is what is the current state of health and health in this country, right? Less than 5% of the $3.5 trillion healthcare budget goes to actually keeping Americans healthy and well. Okay, that means that most of the programs are designed for crisis-style care, or I have a problem and we need to fix it, okay? Versus, how can we prevent this? How can we keep this from happening? How do we keep people thinking about strategies for their health that prevent them from even falling into disease or illness in the first place, or understanding how to better adapt to it when it is happening? Roughly 1 in 2 Americans has a chronic medical condition, and chronic meaning that it's something that they believe will not resolve spontaneously. Okay, you basically will need to have constant care to have this corrected. And more than likely, it's something you'll be living with for the rest of your life, right? We've all heard that before, this idea of, I have to live with this disease, or I'm basically stuck with it, okay? 90% of seniors have at least one chronic disease, and believe it or not, 70% or more have one or more, okay? And chronic diseases are among the most common and costly health problems. They're also amongst the most preventable, right? So things like heart disease or even blood pressure, right? Different things like that related to the heart that you know are chronic diseases and disorders. Diabetes type 2, highly preventable, but it's considered a chronic disease once someone has it. And for most people are told it's reversible, and at the same time, we're quick to put them on some type of drug regimen or something like that. That it's easy for them to just stay on that and kind of add that into their everyday normal, right? And it doesn't have to be that way, is basically what we're trying to say by looking at a different way of viewing our health and wellness. Lastly, the World Health Organization has ranked the U.S. healthcare system, first off, highest in cost and responsiveness. So awesome, right? It costs a lot and we're really fast. We'll be there when you have a problem, which is good, right? We want it to be quick, especially when we're having an emergency. The issue is that we rank 37th overall in performance and 72nd amongst 199 other member nations that were surveyed in terms of overall health of their citizens. World Health Organization defines health not only as a lack of physical symptoms, but also what is your mental, emotional, and even social health like, despite the presence of disease, pain, or dysfunction. Okay, so there's an importance at looking at the whole person and exactly what's going on and how our everyday life is affecting us, how we're interacting socially is affecting us, whether it be family life, work life, you name it. The nervous system and our bodies are constantly taking this information in, and if we're not, in a healthy place with it, then what happens is it heads towards dysfunction. Okay, it moves in that direction. And then, of course, we move into crisis care. We're like, oh my gosh, how did this happen? Yesterday I was good, and then I woke up today and pop, there goes my back. Or, wow, I'm all of a sudden having this problem, and I don't know where it came from. So we want to move from that crisis care, and we want to be more in a preventative mindset, which you've probably heard before, but hasn't really been a great model set up for it. The issue is that the existing model of healthcare is not enough. It's good, but it's not everything that we can be looking at. So a couple things I want to share as we move into this idea of reorganizational healing is this is Dr. Kim Jost with the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine, saying that there can be no doubt we're witnessing the birth of a powerful method of healing, grounded in rigorous scientific fact, that will become integral to future systems of healthcare, right? And that's talking about not just changing the entire healthcare system, but starting to come alongside it and say, hey, guess what? Yeah, you guys are doing great as far as your crisis care is concerned, but we also need to be thinking about some of these other things. And here are strategies and ways we can start talking about prevention and how we can really get people to a place of health and wellness. Another thing, right, this is Robert Blanks, performed one of the largest chiropractic studies done in the country, 2,800 participants, and we're going to talk about that a little later. But he's a professor of cell biology and anatomy at the University of Miami, saying that on rare occasions, one can step back and say, wow, that's a really great idea. Now might be that time. And the idea of reorganizational healing presents a radically new big picture view of health and healthcare that challenges the current dominant disease model of biomedicine, right? And again, it's not to say that it's wrong or that it's not right. It's just to say that there is more, right? And I think this slide, this will be another slide that will show it here. But so reorganizational healing, that's the concept that we're going to be talking about. And that's what we're going to be looking at versus a concept of healing called restorative therapeutics, which is really the current biomedical platform. And as you can see here, a health change model whose time has come, right? Because people are hungry for this kind of thing. They're hungry for more. They're tired of going to every specialist and saying, they can't tell me what's going on, right? And so there has to be something more. There has to be a missing link that we haven't really delved into. And reorganizational healing is great because it's great from a visual standpoint here, and that's why I use the caterpillar becoming the chrysalis and then ultimately becoming the butterfly, right? Because that kind of shows it's a transformative process. It's not just something that happens overnight. It's something that does require time. And it's about not necessarily, I don't become a butterfly and say I've got a bum wing and then go back to becoming a chrysalis and say, yeah, life's better now, right? I continue on. It's the same thing as in the chrysalis state. The butterfly doesn't go back to become a caterpillar. It becomes something new. It reorganizes its current state and becomes something brand new, right? A new identity, a new sense of self. And that's a lot of what reorganizational healing ultimately is about. And this is what I was saying, why we don't want to say that what we're providing from a reorganizational standpoint is better than the current system, but I'll tell you that different is exactly what it is. And I love this statement. I heard it on a podcast recently. Different is better than better, right? It's about taking that different view, that different approach to health and wellness, because it's not just me saying that the system doesn't work. You can ask a lot of people about how they've been through the healthcare, ringer in a sense. Okay, so it's not new. It's not a new idea. And so the idea of reorganizational healing is about creating that greater overall sense of well-being and health, improving your capacity for healthier lifestyle choices. One of the things we say here in the offices is that healthy people make healthy choices, not the other way around. You can probably know plenty of people who have tried to work out or change their diet and things like that, but it just seems to always fall off. Well, when we start to look at the person and find strategies for them to become healthier internally, then ultimately it becomes easier to make these shifts and change towards healthier lifestyle choices. And doing it sustainably, right? Sustainability in these health strategies, sustainability in the amount of energy we can bring to the table to wake up every day and to perform the tasks that we need to perform, or to pursue the things we want to pursue, right? Because again, it's easy to go off to a Tony Robbins seminar or off to a health class and come back jazzed up and fired up, and then all of a sudden what happens is, the energy drops back down. So it's about being able to create a sustainable framework in our nervous system, in our bodies, and in our life to maintain that. And lastly, yes, what we like to say is it's about living a life beyond anything we ever thought possible, right? It's Sometimes it's dirty work, sometimes it's rough, but at the same time as you emerge and you become that butterfly in a sense, right? The world looks totally different and you start to see that there's more possibility, right, than what you thought was available when we were in a state where it looked like everything was collapsing and our world wasn't functioning the way we thought it should. So one of the great concepts for reorganizational healing is more versus less, right? When we think about restorative therapeutics, we think about taking something away, right? Versus gaining something from our current situation or finding out what we can have more of in our current situation. So that's why we use this. Have you ever asked someone what they want and they only told you what they don't want, right? It probably happens all the time. I know I'm a culprit of it, but right, I want to lose weight versus I want to be fit and healthy. I don't want to die versus I want to live. I want to get rid of my debt versus I want to have abundance and prosperity. And I don't want this pain versus I want to be free to do the things I want to do. Okay? And I could even go a step further and say an even better way to say some of these I want is to I choose, I claim, these kind of things, right? Having even more of a conscious language way of approaching it. And saying, yeah, I choose to be fit and healthy. I choose to live, right? That's powerful. I choose to live, right? And if you really allow yourself to experience that within your body, and we'll talk about ways to experience your body, mind as a unit later on, then these things become 10 times more powerful, right? Because you're actually feeling them within your body, you're touching your body when you're saying it, right? It becomes kinesthetic, auditory, you start to engage multiple senses, and then you really start to experience these states of consciousness and ways of being that produce health and wellness. So restorative therapeutics is the current model, and the concept is, and there's some key points here I put up, it seeks a cause or a blame, right? The reason you would seek someone for restorative therapeutics or you seek this model is because you're asking questions like who, what, where, when, why, and how did this happen, right? You've got questions and you want answers. So that's understandable, and that's in this particular model. It's about returning the person to that prior state or to a past state. It's about symptoms becoming a problem to get rid of, okay? It's very biomedical. It's numbers. It's a numbers game. It's like you go to the doctor and they tell you, yeah, this number's wrong or this number's off. You got to correct that. Your cholesterol's too high, take the statin. Your blood pressure's too high, take the blood pressure med. You know, this, that, and the other thing. And you become a number and not necessarily a person, right? And it's health at best, right? This formula down here is what I like to call the restorative therapeutics formula, and it doesn't fall within the algebraic formula, which we'll see later, right? But it's the idea of A is where you started, and B is your problem. And if we take B away, then you've got A. You're back to where you started again. Great, right? It's about fixing that that issue or that problem. The only problem with that is that you've still got A, which was the same state, same place your body was in, to fall into B and become dysfunctional again. Instead of learning something from the current situation or the pain or the disease or the illness and then moving forward. And there's a couple other common assumptions that go along with restorative therapeutics, right? And this is this idea of the symptom as a problem to get rid of, right? There's something disturbing the way a person is feeling or living their life, and that this disturbance is wrong and must be stopped. Okay, that's under this restorative model. And by stopping the symptom or crisis, that individual can resume as closely to possible their life, their routines, and their actions before they had the problem. Success ultimately is getting back to that previous and familiar space. And the physical condition, the biomedical tests are what are showing the pathology, right? Or there's a non-average state that's causing a person's ill health. Then prevention of this condition is of the utmost importance. And this is done by earlier testing of the biomedical indicators and treatment of that. So it's kind of saying like, oh, hey, let's check you out as early as possible to see if you have this problem, right? You probably know that, screenings, you go for different health screenings, different tests and things. It's trying to say, hey, let's make sure we catch it before it happens, which understandably we want to prevent those things. But at the same time, do you think about the consciousness of even sitting in the idea of, hey, let's make sure this doesn't happen versus let's not even go down that rabbit hole, right? Let's stop living in a place where we say everyone who's 65 has the chance of getting this particular disease or disorder. Now, there's a track record for those things, but if you also talk about something enough, there becomes, self-fulfilling prophecy for a lot of these things. And then lastly, that the treatment of the symptoms or disease will promote or produce greater health or wellness, right? So that by taking the pills or by doing the particular treatment that they're providing, that this will actually restore health and wellness. And that's not necessarily always the case, especially when it comes to chronic disorders where it's like, well, this pill is going to get you back to somewhat of a normal place and you just have to take this pill the rest of your life. No, that doesn't sound like health to me, right? It doesn't sound like wellness to me necessarily. And we understand that there are things that you have to do that for, but at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff doesn't have to move in that direction. So as we continue to move forward, now we're going to talk about reorganizational healing. So now this is kind of the opposite, right? Or just that different perspective now. We're seeking now a connection to the body and mind, right? We're seeking depth of meaning versus cause and blame, right? Now we're really trying to understand what exactly is going on. What have I been doing or what has been happening that has gotten me to this place? Not versus saying something outside of me, I experienced this, or, even the idea of, oh, I got this bacteria or something like that, and that's the cause. Well, a lot of that we know now is a lot more about the environment that the person has within their body, right? The environment is, leaves them susceptible to these things. So seeking that depth of meaning is critical in reorganizational healing. The person then can create new life possibilities. Symptoms, and this is a key factor here, become a means towards change versus being a problem or looked at as wrong. Okay? It's a humanistic and social science, right? It really is looking at the human condition and what we experience every day, and in our everyday evolving world, how things are getting more fast-paced, and really trying to understand how are humans living in the world today, and how is that affecting their health and wellness. And it's trying to create a complete sense of wellness. And a lot of times, despite challenges we're experiencing in life, okay? And then, right, here's our traditional algebraic equation, the A plus B equals C, right? So where you started plus whatever you're currently dealing with, and then a new outcome on the other side because of how we've learned, grown, and evolved through the process of experiencing that mental, physical, or emotional pain or dysfunction, okay? And again, there's some common assumptions that go along with this, with reorganizational healing as well. And again, more to kind of elaborate on that the symptoms as a means towards change. So again, something is disturbing the way a person was feeling or living their life. Now this disturbance suggests that a change in perception or action is necessary in some aspects of the individual's life. Although it's uncomfortable and disruptive of their life, the symptom becomes instructive and not adversarial. The purpose of the symptom is adaptive, to interrupt an existing pattern. Success is creating new energy-efficient emergent strategies which are happening at a higher level of organization within the body, as well as in the person's consciousness and within their life. Change, adaptability, new meaning, new actions, and new consciousness states are what's desired. Most often, there's little correlation between the symptom itself, the disease, and the internal experience of that wellness or illness. Okay, so that means, what that's saying is that despite there being maybe disease or dysfunction, you can still have a feeling of wellness. Okay, you can still have an overall conscious feeling that you're well, even when you're facing these challenges. Like, right, if you wake up and you have a new pain, it doesn't necessarily have to be, oh my gosh, I have to get this fixed right away. It's instead you're starting to ask these questions. What's going on here? Why is this all of a sudden happening today? Whoa, did I do something? Did I not do something? And start to really kind of peel back the layers as to, okay, I know this didn't just pop up, so what's really going on? And lastly, that wellness and health in this model of healthcare becomes an interactive process involving multiple aspects of one's life and the internal state. And new resources can be fortified very rapidly in spite, again, of crisis or symptoms or disease. And so that's the two models compared to each other. And so now moving forward, we're going to talk more about the reorganizational healing model than the restorative model. But I didn't want to set the stage for the comparison. So this is a great question. This is one you can sit there and ponder, you can think about, and I'll give some examples. But when is one time in your life that you sought reorganizational healing and it was successful? Now, here's the thing, is you may not even known that you were seeking it. So let's think about the job that you hate that you got fired from, and then you turned around and got the job of your dreams, or you got the better job, or the job you had been seeking, or the job with the better benefits, right? The relationship that was no longer serving you, that you realized you were holding on to a bad pattern there, and then ultimately you left that relationship and found someone else, or experienced a different relationship than you'd ever even thought possible, right? And so these are ways you can think about. Same thing with experiencing a disease or an illness. You've probably heard people who have experienced something like heart disease and have completely transformed their lives, knowing that they needed to change their life or that illness was going to overtake them. Well, in that case, right, that's where the symptom becomes, the teacher, and says, we got to make a change now, or otherwise we're going to have a problem here. So, so something to think about and ponder and think, maybe there are moments in my life that I didn't even know I was reorganizing, but after I look back, I say, wow, that was the best thing that happened, even though at the time it seemed like the worst thing. Right. So this model here, this comes from looking at health-related quality of life outcomes and different groups of the various models and how they play into the reorganizational umbrella. So when we look at the biological and physiological all the way over there on the left, that's your biomedical model, right? And same with kind of symptom status, right? That's all falling within the current paradigm, okay? Then you move into functional status right there in the middle, and now you're looking at things like physical therapy, occupational therapy, traditional chiropractic services, trying to restore functional status, right? There's motivation, right, to seek that type of thing, right? And there's also typically social and economic support systems that allow those things to happen, okay? Next, as you continue to move forward, you have the general health perceptions. Now what's happening is we're shifting gears a little bit versus just saying, okay, here are the numbers, or here's the range of motion, and, oh, okay, you can jump higher, we get that, right? Now we're saying, well, how are you perceiving your own health? How do you perceive your mental state? How do you perceive your emotional state? How do you perceive your physical state? Does it cause you anguish when you're in pain? Or are you kind of like, no, I know it's there and it's okay? This area came about and was heavily studied in that blank study that I talked about earlier that Robert Blanks performed. And they created a quality of life survey that tried to measure all these things and look at, well, how are people really experiencing their life, not just from a physical state, but a mental, emotional state? And what do people think? Do they think they're doing pretty well? Are they in pain, but yet they still feel like their life is good, or are they in pain and they know it and it's causing them a lot of problems, right? And so that's important, because how you perceive yourself is much more important than what the numbers say all the time, right? And then lastly is overall quality of life. In this case, you're looking at similar things from that perspective of what kind of things play into quality of life. Is it just that I don't feel any pain, or is it how I deal with stress? Is it what I'm doing for life enjoyment, my connection to other people, to myself? If I have belief of something greater than me, all of those things play in a role as far as quality of life is concerned as well, right? my mental emotional state, my physical state, all these things. And you see other factors there. So there's a lot of other factors that play a role. It's not necessarily just, whether or not we're in a good or bad state when it comes to the traditional view of health and wellness. And you can see this big yellow arrow at the base, increasing complexity and increasing energy resources needed, right? So, as you move down along the line, you become more complex. The factors that control overall quality of life aren't as simple as you've got the right blood pressure, you've got the right, glucose number, right? Insulin factors and different things like that. That stuff becomes less, or is much less complex than as you move forward, and also requires more energy, which we'll talk more about. A lot of folks start to get concerned when you talk energy. They say woo-woo and these kind of things. But the thing is that people like Einstein and other great physicists basically have said, well, no, the universe and everything is energy at its smallest, at the smallest level, was it Max Planck said, once you get down to the very base of everything, it's energy, right? And so we are that. We're experiencing it. We're within a system that's bound by energy. And so it's important to understand how our body regulates that, how our body interacts with it, and how we can actually generate more energy in our body for more to increase our quality of life and our general health perceptions. And that's something that the reorganizational model brings into play that the traditional model isn't talking about. So the reorganizational model also looks at the body-mind as having various intelligences, right? Different ways that you can access energy and information within your body. Now, the baseline is bioenergetic. That's the first one there. This is a life force energy. It's that biochemical energy, okay? It controls the formation of your organs, your tissues, your ligaments, your bones. It's your connective tissue, right? It's the very baseline intelligence that runs your body. It's doing all the stuff that you're not thinking about. It's helping you breathe. It's helping you move. It's sending the pain signal saying, hey, we have a problem here, right? It's exactly what you would think of from, it's that intelligence that you don't even think about that's running and controlling your body, okay? And it's typically the first level of intelligence that that a practitioner working in a reorganizational model is going to try to affect, okay? The next is an emotional intelligence. There's studies done showing that there is actually a completely separate motor system from your voluntary motor system. It's known as the emotional motor system. It works with your larger muscles of the body, okay? It's posturing you. So when you're feeling, empowered, you're going to posture a certain way. When you're feeling sad, you're going to posture a certain way. When you're feeling, beat up, just like, kind of downtrodden, you're going to posture a certain way. When you're angry, you're going to posture a certain way. And there's a full spectrum of human emotion available. But it also doesn't just play on the role of happy, sad, awe, good, these kind of things. It also plays into the immune system, right? It's actually, emotion is a cellular response within the body. Candace Pert, she wrote a book called Molecules of Emotion. And she talked about how they were able to map the proteins that interacted with your cells when you were experiencing a particular range of emotion. And when that happens, what was actually happening is you actually can change the genetic response and the genetic output of your cellular system based on your range of emotional experience. If you've ever listened to, there's a speaker, his name's Gary Vaynerchuk, and one of the things he's emphasizing right now, he said, the future is not going to be necessarily in your skills or your ability to perform tasks, but it's going to be your ability to access your emotional intelligence. Because you're going to have to be able to interact with other human beings still. You're going to have to recognize that I'm not an island, that if we can communicate properly and we can have a good conversation, that we'll actually achieve more and do more as a team than we will as an individual. Okay, and the emotional intelligence plays into that thing. And since we just had the discussion about energy, I always cut the E off of emotion, and you can flip that equal sign around there and put it between the E and motion. and you have energy equals motion. So energy in motion is emotion. All right? And the way you'll experience that is sigh, or I'm empowering my body by getting angry, or by these there's the All Blacks. They're a rugby team. They do a ceremonious dance with chanting and yelling at the beginning. They're engaging their emotional intelligence. They're preparing their bodies to make change. They're putting it in a state to achieve a certain goal. And when you have better control of that, then you can put your body in that place when you're having that happen. When you need to experience sadness, you've had a loss or something like that. So emotional intelligence is a big one. It's often overlooked, shunned, I think, a lot of times in the current medical paradigm. It's like, we don't really talk about those kind of things, right? We don't talk about emotion because we're not really sure what it is, so we're not going to bring it up. The next thing is the thought intelligence. Now there's a split here, okay? The lower mental and the upper mental. The lower mental is, you can think of it as your cultural conditioning. It's, as you were growing up, people telling you this is right, that's wrong. This is up, that's down. This is how we behave in society. We don't say these things, we say these things. We don't do these things, we do these things, right? It's kind of the rules for living, okay? And you need that kind of stuff because, if you go too far in society, you're going to end up, in jail, or you're going to end up with a problem, right? So there is a nice balance there. It's not to say that your cultural conditioning is wrong. And at the same time, you also want to get to a place where you eventually emerge and start to develop your own rules, right? And understand that the rules of the society don't always apply, or the rules culturally at home, or in your religion, or in the way that you do things at work. They don't always apply the way that works best for us as an individual always. And if you go from the lower mental and you push, and we go back up for a second, this is all dealing with the part of your brain and nervous system that's known as your brainstem, right? It's the lower brain. It's a lot of times fight or flight. It's very much survival based, and we're going to talk more about that in just a little bit here as well. And so those things are kind of on autopilot a lot of times, and you can start to control your emotional, state. Once you start to achieve some of these upper mental, soul, universal intelligence aspects as well. But as we move into upper mental, now you move into executive function, or the frontal lobe. And really, when you're in upper mental, this is what makes humans humans. This allows us to plan, and allows us to experience different states of emotion that a lot of other animals are unable to obtain or necessarily show in the same way. This also allows us to deny our lower functioning brain as well, deny survival instincts and things of that nature. So the upper mental allows that, but it also gives you a big picture view of things. And it allows you to move beyond a defense physiology or strategies, right? So if we're moving out of that lower brain, we're able to kind of push past this idea that, hey, this world is unsafe, or that I can't. I have to create these strategies to defend myself from the world or things that are happening to me. So the upper mental is big for that, right? And it's tough to get there always. It's not always easy to see the big picture. It's not always easy to move past defense physiology. And there's strategies and things for that are falling within the reorganizational model that are helping people to do that. And these last two, these ones are a little bit more upper mental, right? Okay, so you're talking soul intelligence. This is the idea of getting to a place where you start to recognize your own gifts and your ability to give and share them. Finding purpose in life, right? Asking the deeper questions about what am I here for? What am I really doing? Where am I going? It allows us to experience more things like love, gratitude, compassion. And imagine if the outcome of your healthcare was more about achieving things like that, love and compassion, and trying to have better understanding of people and one another and ourselves, versus just trying to correct some numbers and get us within the quote-unquote normal, right? And so that's what that intelligence is there, and it's you may even have been in places like that, right? These things they're a continuum. They're not necessarily like a linear progression. They're a continuum, how you can access these things and be a part of them, right? Because no matter what, I'm not going to progress away from my bioenergetic. I need my body to function. But at the end of the day, when I'm in a safe place, I can also stop and sit and journal about what my life's purpose is and what the hell am I really doing here, right? All deep questions that people have been asking for a long time that we've kind of gotten away from. And lastly is universal. So this is an idea of that there's still diversity, but we are one system. It's all one system. Our bodies are one system. Really, there's minimal separateness to things. There's separateness when it's important, right? And at the same time, we can recognize ourself within others, the capacity of wrongs and rights to be done, as we notice it in other people, to notice that we have that capacity too. And this helps to kind of bring a general community to everyone and everything. Okay, and so that one was a little longer there, a little bit more in depth. These concepts now are a lot higher, and we can break these concepts down in other events as well, and other seminars. So another aspect of reorganizational healing are the seasons of well-being. Okay, so we're going to move through these quickly because, again, this can be its own thing. But seasons of well-being, they influence what's possible for people, right? So if you're in Discover, there's only a range of what's possible in Discover. And then as you're in Transform, that's going to say whether or not we can make the changes we need to make, right? And Awaken, right? That's going to be a different state. There's going to be love. There's going to be gratitude. And Integrate is trying to live your life, being able to access all of these seasons throughout our day, throughout our week, and throughout our life. All right? And they're going to, as we move forward, we're going to talk about some modalities that occur within reorganizational healing. One is going to be network spinal care, which is a level-based care system. And these actually relate to the level of care in which people show up to when they see a practitioner doing that type of work. It's also going to determine the level of empowerment you can receive from your healing at that point in time. So if you're in Discover, there's only going to be, again, that certain range that you can experience for your healing empowerment. But when you move to Transform right away, that sounds different, right? It's about transforming your life and changing your current situation, changing your habits and behaviors. So that's another thing there. The amount of healing that can occur in each is going to be different. And it also allows you to communicate about healing differently, right? And with an expanded spectrum of how we talk about health and healing. And Discover, most people are hanging out in Discover, right? Because it's a baseline. It's very much a we're trying to figure out what's going on in our life. We're trying to figure out maybe what's going on with our pain, our physical state, our mental, emotional state, right? We're asking a lot of those questions. Why me? Why now? What's going on? Who can fix this? Boom, boom, boom. That's very Discover. And it does come with a victim type label to it. Okay, when we're in Discover, a lot of times we're in a victimhood. We're saying, why me? Who to blame? What to blame? This is early levels of that type of care, of network spinal care, and it deals a lot with the bioenergetic and emotional intelligences. Okay, so Discover works in those two areas. Next is Transform, and this comes with the label of change, right? It's about moving ahead. It's about creating plans, creating goals, and finding a deeper sense of self. It's a transition from a patient to a practice member, to someone who's now becoming participatory in their health and healing versus just asking someone to take it all away. Okay, you typically also can find increased energy to influence yourself and others to make change. The currency of Transform is thought. And so that's where you're getting into the lower and upper mental intelligences, right? First, it's that level of saying, here are the rules that I was raised with, and now how can I think critically about them to see if they really apply, right? And can I upgrade those? Can I rewrite the rule book, right? And so that's that teeter between lower and upper mental intelligence there. These are still considered level 2 of network spinal care, and just different versions of that level. So they differentiate them into A, B, and C levels of care as well. So you would be, Discover is level 1, A, B, C, level 2A of care. Transform is level 2, B, and C of care. Okay, and for those in the room, when you're on your back, That's 2C. That's level 2C of care. Level 2B is still prone or side posture. So, and then awaken has the term now applied to it, being in the present, right? Becoming one with a spiritual nature, right? Some deeper aspects than I'm just a mechanistic being in this world. Currency of awaken is love and gratitude. And you move into a place where you're ready to enlighten others. You're ready to bring others along. You're just not looking at it as like hey, I'm solo here. Hey, no, you're like, hey, I found the goods and I want y'all to come experience it too, right? And now you're looking at more like soul intelligence and universal spirit intelligence in that area. And then lastly is integrate. And integrate is saying that we don't live in a vacuum, right? It's not like I'm just in Discover. I could be in Discover, Transform, and Awaken all in one day. I can go from losing my dog to realizing I've got to put on a seminar today to also stopping and smelling the roses, right? And notice and saying, hey, you know what? We're all in this together, and integrate all those things throughout my day. Especially once you've experienced them, once you've emerged from Discover, and so forth. So, and if the colors are to help us orient ourselves with the season chart there. So, Discover is winter, right? It's a time of deep introspection, right? A time of hibernation at times, right? Transform, spring, we're starting to emerge, right? We're starting to see our possibilities in life. Awaken, now we're blossoming, with it. The summer is in full swing, and we are energy rich, and we're able to move forward in life with purpose and determination. And then integrate brings it all back around because, right, eventually the leaves do die, and we find ourselves in winter again. And then that cycle continues. And you can jump all around when it comes to integrate. So that's the seasons of well-being. Lastly, one more tool that we talk about is the triad of change, and it kind of brings all of this together. So we talked about, right, bioenergetic, the emotional, the mental intelligence, the spiritual intelligence. That's what's all floating around the outside of the circle there, right? So all of those things are interconnected and they all play a role. And then the way that you generate energy is important for health and healing, because you need the energy to be able to make changes in your life when you're ready to do that, or to create new habits, or to have new perspectives, right? And so behavior is a pattern of action taken. It's a series of sensory motor patterns, which is basically movement, breath, different things like that, and an expression of the internal state that you can actually see. You can actually see someone moving, you can actually see them breathing deeply or breathing shallowly, right? And it's a purposeful movement towards a goal or objective. And perception, right? That's a chosen perspective. It's a mode or a style or manner of focus. It's a connection between body sensation and meaning. And structure, that's a form serving basically as a vessel. It's a structure or a medium for energy and information to exchange. It's really being able to say this compared to that, right? It's a very structural statement. And the thing is that through this model of healthcare, we begin to understand how do you create that change in your life. I'll just use myself as an example because I'm experiencing this journey along with everyone here in the practice. For the longest time, I thought I was the type of guy that could fly by the seat of his pants, right? I was always like, yeah, I'm just ready for anything. I'll go. So that's very behavior type of concept. And you can thrive in that place, right? But it also keeps me very status quo. I'm not really keeping track of what's happening, right? I'm just kind of like, oh, I'll do that now. Oh, squirrel, I'll go over here and do that, right? And I generate a baseline amount of energy from that. Like I get some things done, but I kind of feel like I'm spinning my wheels in behavior. And that would be considered a keystone, right? The centerpiece of how I generate change or progress in my life. And recently I've found that the primary way that I generate energy is through structure. By setting times and things like that throughout my day where I can allow behavior to come into play. So I can say, I'm going to get up and I'm going to journal at 5:30 in the morning. Well, my journaling itself, the actual act of journaling, has almost no structure to it. And at the same time, it's me setting the time to allow my behavior to operate within that structure that allows me to generate more energy. Now, it might be different for other people. Unfortunately, you may be the type of person listening to this saying, well, you know, everybody says you have to have a structure, right? You got to be at the place on time. You got to be there on time. You be there on time. Have you ever been the person who's been like, that doesn't work for me? Being on places on time or having a rigid structure or schedule just isn't your thing. You know, if you're coming to the practice, right? And you're like, well, I know you got me down for 3 o'clock, but my schedule's all over the place. I don't work well with structure. Then right, so structure wouldn't be how you primarily generate energy. It could actually be what drains your energy. And so for me, perception is what drained my energy. As I tried to feel my body and my emotions and try to understand myself from a feeling perspective, I started to drain. I was like, I don't know what I'm feeling. I don't know what I want. I don't know what my needs are. You can't ask me these questions because I'm not in a place to answer them. Because perception, when it's not powered by the other two aspects of the triangle, for me, doesn't work. But when I start to bring structure into my life and allow behavior to flow through that structure, guess what? I start to recognize what I feel and what I need and what I need to say and how I perceive the world, right, improves. And so we want to work with people in that way too. We want to help you understand what you're trying to change. And it's still something we're learning about. And even the folks that I learned from are still just starting to emerge on the front of understanding how this works. Which is what's fun about this type of work too, is it's constantly evolving. People are still studying it, trying to understand it, and trying to bring it to the forefront. So again, this could be a class in itself as well, right? There's a lot of depth of meaning here to all of this. So let's keep on moving here. So I want to talk about reorganizational healing through one of the modalities or aspects of that paradigm, which is known as network spinal care. Okay, network spinal care is the brainchild of Dr. Donald Epstein, who is a chiropractor. He started with what they call upper cervical chiropractic, which focuses on the adjustment of just the first vertebra of the spine. And the belief was behind that is as you unlock that vertebra, the rest of the spine will fall into place, and the nervous system will be able to reorganize and change based on that. Now he has moved away from that, created his own system under network spinal, and it's in its third installment actually. So it started in the early 90s with a very crude understanding, and the reason they call it network, it's a network of a handful of chiropractic techniques and concepts that have been worked into one coherent system. Then it went to network spinal analysis. So it was network chiropractic in the 90s, network spinal analysis kind of up until probably 2 or 3 years ago. So probably through the 2000s, right? And then now it's in the third installment called network spinal. Now, with each one, they've refined and reduced exactly what it is they're trying to achieve as far as an outcome, how they're working with the spine and nervous system, and the result they're trying to produce, right? And it's only getting more and more specific, okay? And so that's where we are now with network spinal. So here's a couple other things with it. So it is an evidence-based approach to wellness and body awareness, right? So being aware of your body in the first place is important to know how you're feeling and what's going on inside, and whether or not things are working right, or you at least perceive them to be working right or wrong, right? And the reason I say evidence-based approach is because it does have a laundry list of research, a lot of which is done outside of the chiropractic profession. So it does fall under the chiropractic paradigm. You do have to have a chiropractic license to practice network spinal care, and it's one of the most highly researched techniques outside of the profession, which is one of the things that drove me to it, because I'd rather hear it from somebody else rather than a chiropractor telling me why I should do this work. So it requires gentle, specific contacts along the spine that cue the brain to create wellness-promoting and reorganizational strategies. And it does that through accessing unique healing rhythms within inside each person. And so as you progress through care, the practitioner can actually begin to feel those rhythms and matches them. And those rhythms help you to release spinal tension, release life tension, as well as take currently existing tension in the body and reorganize it into wellness strategies. changes, all right? And that's also going to help create sustainability and things of that nature. And really the work is conditioning the space around the nervous system so that as you experience life, you can step into the changes that you want to be making versus someone having to say you have to make these changes. You just start to fall into them in a sense, right? That's why there's some amount of, it doesn't say it here, but there is some amount of spontaneity to some of it. I can't always say that someone's going to turn around and change their diet, although the research shows that they will. It just depends on how or when that happens, which are probably less of, the less predictable portions of the care. Oh, great. So got a fun video. You can stop hearing me talk for a couple seconds. This is generally the idea of what happens and what we're trying to achieve in the nervous system through network spinal care. Okay, when you come in or when you're experiencing life, you're going to experience it as these metronomes all kind of clicking out of sync. But when you start to, one, fall into a reorganizational model, and you start to tap into your rhythms, as well as receiving something like network spinal care, the outcome of what happens in this video is what we're trying to achieve before in your spine and nervous system, so that it happens more regularly like this. Oh, unfortunately. Of course, that's the way it happens, right? Let me see if it'll let me go back and well, let me just play it. There we go. Okay. An entrainment is actually the name of the network spinal adjustment. And this is what happens. You come into the office, or you're just in your everyday life, and all the things, you got this here, this there, this, that. And we're all over the place. And the idea is that those light, subtle cues to the body are starting to sync up all the signaling in the nervous system with one coherent signal to obtain efficiency of the energy in the nervous system and the capacity for the nervous system to heal. See, synchrony is perhaps the most pervasive drive in all of nature. Well, guess what? You're nature. So there has to be some way for us to create that synchronicity, for us to create that coherency in the system. And then they're gonna knock one out of place. And quickly gets pulled back in. Synchronizing the brain to its beat. Now you want to synchronize the brain and nervous system to your internal beat. That is your healing rhythm. All right, that allows you to experience the world in the way that you were meant to experience it. So hopefully that visual helped. That's a fun one for sure. So this is a gentleman by the name of Edmond Jonquière. He is a electrical engineer, and he says that it is fair to assert that network spinal care provides some sort of reorganizational healing effect. And what he did in his studies, and still does in his studies, is he sets up electrodes, brain electrodes, and electrodes along the spine. And what he does is he has someone undergo the care, and then he waits to see where there are syncing signals in the system. Right? So what happens is he sees them scattered to start, and then the contact is made on the spine, and then all of a sudden there starts to have a consistent rhythm, and he's measuring what's happening in the cervical spine, what's happening in the thoracic spine, what's happening in the lumbar spine, and ultimately those signals start to line up, and they start to become in sync, right? And so that's something he's written dissertations on and multiple papers on now about how when these things sync up, it's actually generating your specific and unique spinal healing generator pattern, in a sense. And again, what's fun is, Department of Electrical Engineering has nothing to do with one chiropractic or health and healing in general. It's just somebody saying, hey, this is an awesome phenomenon and we're seeing some cool stuff from it. And so the result of something like network spinal care is greater self-awareness, greater resourcefulness, and a conscious awakening of the relationship between the body, mind, and emotions, and the expression of your most authentic nature. Okay, right? Because once you start tapping into that healing rhythm, it's going to be tough to fight who you are and how you function in the world, all right? And when you're more authentic with yourself, guess what? It's easier to be more authentic with others, and other people hop on board, right? They're more like, oh, okay, hey, yeah. They feel loved when you're more authentic. They feel like you're compassionate when you're more authentic. So last couple things here. There's a few other things. I'm going to talk a little bit about the research, and then we'll wrap up. So there are a couple other tools that fall within the paradigm currently as we know it. One is the somato-respiratory integration. It's a series of exercises designed for you to experience your body in personal healing. It's body awareness education through focused attention, gentle breath, motion, and touch, right? Feeling your body, moving your body, breathing in parts of your body, and focusing your attention to really find out what's happening, right? Really feel what's really going on with that pain, and how can I maybe activate that pain and use it as a source of healing. And then the partner, the companion book that goes along with the care, the 12 stages of healing, assists you in further understanding, first off, the reorganizational model, having this different view of healthcare, and also provides the information regarding the actual exercises for somato-respiratory integration. And so it gives you kind of a step-by-step of what those exercises look like, and there's one for each stage of healing. So those are just some other tools. Last thing is that research I was talking about. So this was the research study that was performed by Robert Blanks. 2,800 subjects undergoing network spinal care across the country. There were some direct effects of network spinal on the health perception of the individual. So they looked at physical effects, the mental, emotional, life enjoyment, and stress-related domains of health, right? These are all the different areas of health that they looked at to see how network spinal was affecting them. And there were also some indirect things they found, right? The indirect, which led to positive changes in health behaviors in the areas of risk avoidance, healthy eating, food choices, and exercises, or exercising. So you can see the numbers there. So there was a decrease in consumption of caffeine. There were people that stopped smoking. There were people that chose more in a lot of senses, right? Because this is the idea. Is we're not really necessarily talking about less. We're talking about more. Folks that chose to be vegetarian, consumption of more vitamins, organic foods, turning to regular exercise, Tai Chi and yoga, increasing meditation. That's a huge one. And other forms of trying to create relaxing techniques, right? And so when you're under this kind of model, the idea is that you should be seeking, or you should ultimately get a sense of seeking what are ways and strategies that I can seek outside of myself as well to help me achieve some of these goals. Now, like things like vegetarian diet doesn't mean if you get under this care you're going to become vegetarian, because I don't necessarily agree that we're necessarily meant to be vegetarian. Do I think that we should be plant-based as a healthcare provider? Yes. And at the same time, I think there's a reason we eat meat, and things like that. So, so some of these things, I'm not necessarily saying that they're right or wrong, but they're just what ended up happening, right? So, but most people would say that some of these things are, okay, awesome. These sound awesome. Here's a little model they made from that type of care. So, the chiropractic care, of course, was the network spinal care. Healthy lifestyles are pretty self-explanatory. They were people that were already performing these health practices of exercise and yoga, already maybe not smoking and doing other things, and also having particular nutritional practices. What they found is that if you just lived healthy lifestyles, right, you just chose to do those things, outside of something like network spinal care or being seen by a reorganizational healing practitioner, that you had a coefficient increase of 0.222 in your wellness factors, right? So you did have some improvement in the idea of your physical state, your mental state, things that cause you stress, and your life enjoyment, right? Secondly, what they found is that if you were under network spinal care, that care alone, minus the healthy lifestyles, had a 0.429 coefficient increase in the experiences of basically self-perceived wellness, physical state, mental state, and so forth. Lastly, they found that if you were under network spinal care, not only were you getting the benefits of the wellness, but you were 0.654, the coefficient system they created, more likely to start choosing healthy lifestyle choices. So you could go from couch potato to healthy lifestyle choices in a matter of what they showed anywhere between 12 to 24 months. And choosing these things without the prompt of the practitioner, having to say, you know, it's like if somebody walks in and they're overweight, duh, they know that. I don't have to sit here and badger them about it. The question is how can we get their spine, their nervous system, and their internal systems healthy enough for them to make the leap, to have enough energy to sustain the change, right? Because that's an important factor too. Again, it's easy to say something, it's a whole other thing to start doing it and create sustainability around it. So this is a fun series of research that I like to look at, and I haven't really talked about with anyone in the office yet, and that's why I want to present it in this today. So that's a fun one, and there's the resource too. I'm pretty sure you can just find this online if you want to find like the PDF for it. You can read through it. Not that I recommend it. I've read through it before. It's a lot. A lot of it went over my head, but at times I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I know what you're saying now. So, and most of the network research is widely available. So this one I'm going to read straight up. This is Dr. Donald Epstein in kind of the general overall umbrella of what he believes this model of healthcare is all about. That it's not about finding new destinations on an existing map. It's about building a brand new map of possibilities and incorporating the elements of life with more ease and flexibility. Each individual has a strategy for change and growth. For most of us, it's unconscious and applied in a seemingly random fashion. Through reorganizational healing, we can understand our individual formula, refashion it, and choose the path through which our health and living can evolve, right? So instead of it just being, I'm randomly making awesome strides, it's about corralling that and saying, how do I actually make those strides, and how can I make more of them? Because I'm already on that path, and now I'm like, well, I don't want it to just be a random thing that happens 10 years from now. What if I can get it done in 2 years? What if I can have more right now versus waiting to figure it all out and having a deeper understanding? I mean, we have the capacity in our minds for this kind of thing for a reason. So finding ways to tap into it is exciting, at least for me. And so I want to leave you with a couple questions. The question is what is your focus? What are your standards for your life, for healthcare, for how you're interacting in the world? What do you want more of in life, and where do you want to be? And lastly, how are you going to get there? Right? And it's okay to not know the answer to these questions first off, but at the same time, when we start to think about them, you know, realize that you're preparing to take a step through a door, right? It's like the door is cracked open right now, and as you start to ask these questions, you're going to delve deeper. And at times it's going to be painful. It's not going to feel great because you're going to look back, and you're going to be pulled into the past. You're going to think, what have I been doing with my life, right? A lot of times, but then on the other side, it's going to be that A plus B equals C type of formula where as you ask the hard questions, as you move through these things, especially if you're dealing with something, if you're in a place of suffering, if you're in a place where you feel like you don't have any hope, or you feel like you've been to everybody and they haven't been able to help, then these are the questions we need to start asking. We need to start going deeper than we have been and what our current model has been doing. So I want to just say thanks. Appreciate everyone for listening. If anyone tuned in on the Facebook Live, awesome. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments. We're going to do a little Q&A here, but I am going to cut the video at that point. You can always contact us, info@beyondchiroatl.com. One thing what we can do is, even if you're not in the Atlanta area or if you're not in the Marietta area, we know other practitioners that are operating under a reorganizational healing umbrella and model, and we can point you in their direction if it's something you want to learn more about. So you can always contact us no matter where you're at, and we can point you in that direction. And we're going to continue to try and have videos like this. I'm finding that the webinar series kind of idea is something that makes it a lot easier for everyone listening and here even in the room to digest this information, to go back, to look at it again, and to continue to learn, grow, and evolve. And you can also follow us at Beyond Chiro ATL on Facebook and Instagram. We'll try to share information about that. A lot of times just inspirational quotes or little exercises, and of course other events we're going to be holding. So, but for now, again, thanks for tuning in. Dr. David with Beyond Chiropractic, where we're taking your nervous system and your life to infinity and beyond.